Hello. In this video, I want to talk to you about how you would start to do a sensitivity analysis on your financial model. At this point, you basically have built out your revenue expense forecasts. You've got your asset values in there. We've calculated our operating cash flows, terminal values, initial investment. We've done a present value calculation on these. And we have our cash balances in each period, so our estimated cash balance. So the way to think about this very simply is right now what you have is let's call it a working financial model, but it's got a number of assumptions in it. And in reality, the odds of that particular combination of assumptions being the way that things work out exactly over the next, call it 10 years, is approximately zero. And so a financial model that's really based on one single set of assumptions isn't very informative to us because we're pretty much guaranteed that we're going to not match that. And so what we want to do is move more to being able to understand the range of values that we might see. And so the sensitivity analysis is the first step in that. And in order to do that, I'm just going to kind of give you a full disclosure up front. It's probably an hour and a half long process. Now, the reason it's that long is, and that can vary from one model to another, is it's really driven by however many assumptions you have. And quite frankly, you're doing the same thing over and over, 3 or 4 different steps, but over and over for every assumption, and that just takes a while. So I didn't want to create a video that's an hour and a half long. So what I'm doing is I've got different versions of my spreadsheet at different stages of completion. And so I'll show you how to start doing a step. I won't necessarily finish it, and then I'll switch to another spreadsheet and start it again. And so hopefully that'll give you the flow of what it is you need to do and how to do it, without you having to sit here and watch an hour and a half of me doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we're going to start out here, and let's just call that step one of this process. I'm going to create a sheet called drivers. And I use the term drivers for the assumptions that really drive our model. Obviously, you can call it whatever you want, but that's how I do it. And so on that sheet, I'm going to need to put our factors. Maybe we could call those assumptions. Okay. And I'm going to put a period column here, simply because some of our assumptions are for, say, month 1, and then we change them again in month whatever. And then I'll put a value. Okay. So literally what we're going to start doing is going through, and remember all those places where I had something highlighted in yellow? We're going to talk about whether or not that thing is an assumption or whether that thing is a fact, if you will. So rather than it being something that we've just sort of baked in, it's something that's sort of a fact of the world that we've hard-coded in. And those things that are assumptions, we want to move over to this driver's sheet. So if we start out, we'll see that the first assumption that we have, and remember we're kind of looking for things that are highlighted in yellow. So the first assumption that we have is the number of students on campus. All right, so we'll just take that value. That's our assumption, so that's the label for it. We'll paste it. I'll worry about formatting here in a minute. We want to get the period that it was set in, and in this case that's month 1. We've set it in month 1. So we'll paste that over here. And then we want to get the value of it. And we're going to paste it over there. All right. And so we're going to then kind of go down, do this again, the next set of yellows that we have. And again, we can kind of scroll across. You can either go down or across. The next set of yellows we have are the student on campus adjustment factor. Remember, this is me estimating kind of how many weeks out of the month, in this case, or how many weeks out of the year that we'd have students present on campus. I don't consider that an assumption. That's an external thing that's determined by the school, and so I'm not going to include that. But the percent of student customers per day, and what we're going to start and end with those is definitely an assumption. So we're going to put that over here, and then we're going to go grab the month one, so you can see kind of how that works. And then we're going to go grab the 10% assumption. So you can see that go over there. And I just want to show you for that one, we then go out and we also have a month 9 version for that. Effectively what I would do there is I'd put another copy there. Let's make this one month 9. I don't know what I did there. Anyway, we'll do a copy. We'll make that month 9. And that was, you can copy paste or you can just enter the values if you remember what they are. So we'll put that in there, okay? And of course, we have those same things going on for each of our categories. So you'd want to add sort of all of those together. And then, after you've done that, you'd want to come down here and look at the dollars per customer. That's a very big one. You'd want to look at the inflation rate, maybe. I probably would not look at the zero inflation rate in month 1 going forward because that's just a simplifying assumption for us. I might just grab the year 2 inflation rate and put it in there. The inflation factor you don't need to worry about because that's just a base that we need, so it's not a true assumption. Days open, certainly an assumption, so we would want to include that in there. Obviously our food and beverage percentages, our labor and period cost percentages, all of those should be in there. Land and buildings should definitely be in there. The taxes, those are defined outside of us. It's not an assumption per se that we made. We simplified them a little bit, but quite frankly, I wouldn't worry too much about the taxes. That sort of thing's probably not important. The growth rate, the capital contribution, those things matter. The weighted average cost of capital matters, right? So all those things you'll want to add. So we're just going to continue to build that driver's sheet on down. And so now I'm going to switch over and show you what that might look like once we've got all of those. And so you can see, what I've included and what I've not included. And again, it's a little bit of a thought process to think, okay, which are things where I had to come up with a number based on things that I assumed versus I just go read what the number was or what the thing was from data that I found. And so it's not even an assumption, it's just a fact. So from here, what you would want to do is start to build out what we would call the sensitivity analysis. All right, and the challenge here basically comes down to this. That the first thing that you're going to want to do there is you're going to want to go through all of these and remember that you have values over here. You had values over in the other place, and so you want to change the formulas so that instead of being a value, right, this used to be $1,200, let's just say, or 1,200 people, you're going to make it equal to whatever the value on the driver's sheet is, okay? And you're going to want to do that with every single one of your assumptions, and I have in fact done that. You can go look and see, for example, that's now tied to driver sheet C4, drivers C5, drivers C6, and so on. So I've done that with all of my assumptions. The reason you want to do that is that we want to be able to change the values on this sheet and have, when we change those, have it change the value in our forecast, okay? Now, next thing that we need to do is we need to capture on this sheet the values that we're paying attention to. So when we say if I change an input, an assumption here, what it changes the value of my project, I need to say what value it's changing. And we have two values we care about, the present value. And so we'll just set the present value on this sheet equal to whatever the calculated present value is for our model. So we calculate that below. There we go. And of course, you know how I am, so I got to clean it up just a little bit. And then the other thing we're going to care about is cash balances. At the end of the day, if we have a set of assumptions that so radically affect cash that they could cause us to run short on cash, we need to know that. All right, because it's going to force us to need to put more cash into the business to make sure that doesn't happen. And so what we really care about is not the total cash balance or the ending cash balance. What we care about is what's the minimum. So we're going to put equals min for minimum, right, of the information on the cash balance tab. So I can just highlight that whole row, okay? And you see it's returning back to you what the smallest value in that row is. So cash balances start out at the 101, which is the smallest value it returns, and they grow at least right now. So we want to pay attention to that, okay? And so these ultimately are the two values that we care about, all right? So then we need to go ahead and build out the sort of scenarios, if you will, that we're going to do these sensitivity tests on. So again, we're going to have our factor or our assumption, whatever you want to call it. All right. And we'll just take all of these and we can just paste them over here. It's really important that you keep these lined up so that you can kind of keep track of what's going on there. And you know, obviously a challenge here that some of those are for different periods, so you probably want to keep that to keep track of it as well. So factor, period, and then we're going to call it the base. Let's just call it the base assumption here. Again, I'm not too picky about the labeling, but you need to follow what I'm doing here. So that would be these values that are the starting values we have. Okay, and I'm just going to paste those there so that we have them. All right, and so now what we need to do is do a down and up scenarios. And what we want to do is we want to say we're going to move the value, the base assumption, down by 10%. And so we're going to set it as equal to 90% or 0.9 times whatever it is. And that's our down move. All right, and so if you go fill that out, there you go. And you can see, for example, 90% of 1,200 people would be 1080. 90% of 10% student customers per day becomes 9%. You can actually go grab these same formattings if that's useful for you. Use the little paintbrush up here to paste formats. And then we would say equals this assumption times 1.1 to grow it up to be 10% more than what it is. And again, I can paste all of these formats, use a little paintbrush to do that. All right, so things get cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and clean my chart up here just a little bit. Sorry, bear with me, that's how I am. And then what we want to do is we're going to put a placeholder here for the values of cash, or excuse me, PV down, PV up, cash down, and cash up. And you'll see here in just a second why we're doing that. And then we're going to want to put something out here that is change down, change up. Oh, we'll just call it changes. It's these same things, sorry. So these are what are really your sensitivities. I can't type, sorry. Sensitivities. And so we're going to merge those cells and kind of share that across. And we just take that whole thing and kind of copy it over again. And these are our changes. So really the difference, all right, for them. Now, I know all of that's just a whole lot of layout, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you yet, but here's what we're going to do. So we're going to start out, we're going to change, we're going to just take this value, we're going to paste it over here. And when we do that, we don't want formulas. So I'm going to go ahead and copy, Control C, so it's copy, edit, paste special values. What that does is remove the formulas. Formulas cause a problem when we're doing this copy and paste. But anyway, so I'm going to take this value, this 1080, and I'm going to paste it over here. And when I do that, it's going to change these values if I've done it properly. Hopefully I have. Yep, you can see that when I did it, it changed the value of the present value and the other. And so what we want to do is to capture what that is. And so PV down, we're going to go copy, paste this value for the PV down. And again, it's paste special values. And then we're going to go capture the cash balance. We're going to put it in cash down, paste special values. Okay. And then very importantly, we now need to go grab the up, do that. It's going to change the values again, so we're going to paste those. That's going to be the PV up. Paste values. Cash up, paste special values. Okay. So we've got some values here. Very important step here. Go put this value back equal to the base. All right. And the reason you do that is I want to be able to say when I move down to the next variable, how does it impact these values when it's the only thing I change? So I have to get these back to the original set of assumptions in order for that to work. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do something here. Going to take these values that are, remember these are our base values, meaning that they are with our base set of assumptions. I'm going to do a paste value on those here. And the reason I'm doing that is I need there to be someplace a value that I can use to figure out how much of a change did this cause. So when I shifted down 10% or up 10%, I need to know how much of a change it caused. So I need a PV value for changes that's equal to the value I got minus the base value. And I'm going to put dollar signs all around that base value so that it's always reading cell F8. All right, so do the same thing for PV up. I can just drag the formula because I put all those dollar signs around to lock it in. So down 157, up 157. Do the same thing for cash. It's equal to the cash down value minus the base cash value. And I'm going to put dollar signs around the column and the row on this again to lock it in. Okay, so it moves cash by 20,000 kind of each way. All right. Now, notice something different, interesting here. Remember, what we're changing is the number of students on cash in a typical day. And we would expect that if the number of students drops, that the present values would go down. And so we see that the present values are going down. The changes, if I lower the number of students, present value goes down. If I raise the number of students, it goes up. But notice here that your cash actually improves with fewer students. And so, the question becomes why? And the answer to that in a nutshell, if you think about it, is that on our model, on my particular model, I assumed that the amount that you were going to invest in month 0, sort of the spending that you were going to do in month 0 in terms of variable and fixed costs to get ready, were 3 months worth of whatever your sort of initial monthly costs are. Well, if your costs are determined as a percentage of your sales, and your sales go down because you have fewer customers, then your costs go down. And if your costs go down, then your initial investment goes down under this. Not a perfect solution in terms of sensitivity, but if you are anticipating something lower, then maybe you spend less initially. So a reasonable outcome. You want to do this, you want to stop and kind of do this sort of check of reasonableness for many of your factors, because this is your best opportunity to figure out whether or not you have an error in terms of formulas in your model. And so it's worthwhile doing this. Anyway, so once you've done that, you've now returned this back to the base assumption value of 1200. You're now going to move down and do the exact same thing with the next one. So you're going to move it to 9. You're going to take the new value, paste it over to down. And this is the part that I was talking about when I'm like, this is going to take all day, right? It's a long process. So what I want to do is, I'll just finish this 1. So we'll take it back up to 11 so that you've seen 2 runs at this. Okay. And then I'm gonna not finish this here. I'm going to skip over to a version of the spreadsheet where it's all finished from that standpoint, so that I'm not just killing you with my doing this over and over again. Let's see, I put that value, you can see I put that value in the wrong place. Put it in the wrong column, that's why we're off. So I'm just going to do this and then drag these over. Okay. And that's part of the hassle of this, is it's so easy to get things off, get them kind of messed up, right? Now, because we've done these formulas with the absolute references to the base values, we can just drag those formulas down. So here's an example where going from a 10% to a 9% or 11% in the number of customers per day doesn't actually have that big of an impact. Right? So changing that sort of initial month 1 assumption doesn't have that big of an impact. Not surprising, since we changed it, but we didn't change the fact that we're gonna grow out to a 40% rate. It's probably the one that's going to matter the most. Just want to remind you that, again, once you're done, you have to change yourself back to the base value. All right. So once you've done that, gone through all of that process, you should get something that looks roughly like this. All right, so you've got all of your down, up values, you've got your changes, okay? And what we want to do from there is, it's really these changes that we care about, okay? So we're going to grab those. Well, first I'm going to create a new sheet, and we'll call it sensitivities, or let's call it tornadoes. That's fine. You'll see what I mean by that here in a second. But we're going to grab that sheet and we're going to go ahead and put our values in there. All right, and I'm going to insert a couple of columns here so that we can give ourselves a little room to work between the cash side of this and the PV side of it. And we're gonna create some charts. And actually, what I need to do here, I need to put the driver names in as well, because I don't want to lose track of those. It's very important, obviously, when you are plotting something, that you have the labels for what the something is. And I'm just going to do these twice, and that way we have them for, I can work really with each of these sets of data separately. All right, and I'm going to add one more column here. You'll see why. I want to do a chart. All right, and so I'm going to start out with insert chart, and what I'm looking for is a sideways bar chart. So I just take the simple clustered bar chart. All right, and it in fact had all of my data there. My problem is that it didn't capture things the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to go in and look at select data. I'm going to remove, all right, and we're going to go in and we're going to start from scratch. And so what I want is, for the name on this chart, I want it to be PV, we'll call it changes, present value changes, all right? And my Y value for the first series is going to be the downs, all right? My X category, sorry, I did this wrong. The Y value on any chart is always the labels in this case, or in our case, it's going to be the labels. And the X value is going to be the width of the downs, okay? And then we're going to add a second one. Actually, I'm going to change this and make it the PV down. Okay, and now we're going to add a second series, and we're going to make its name PV up. And the Y values, once again, are going to be these things. And the X values are going to be the up values. We're going to say, okay. Scroll down and see what we got here. Clearly didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Not sure what happened there. Let's see. Tell you what, we're just going to start from scratch. We're going to just put something down here, insert. Sometimes Excel gets a mind of its own and tries to build a chart that you don't want it to build. So, sometimes we just have to work with that. So we're going to start from scratch here, and we are going to select data. All right, we're going to add a series, and the first part of that series is going to be the why is my sheet not scrolling? There we go. We're going to give it the label, call it PV down. Again, the Y values should be all of our labels here. Really not sure why it's doing that unless this somehow reverses those. Because ordinarily, I did this before and it worked fine. Let's see what happens when we do this. Yeah, so it's reversing these. So as Y values, we're going to put the PV down. Let's do that. And as X values, we're going to put the data here. There we go. Okay. So again, it's a little bit counterintuitive because the chart gets flipped. But you're going to now do a second one, and that's PV up. The So you're going to do PV up, sorry, here we go. Your Y values again are actually going to be these up values. Your X values are going to be the labels. And we'll say OK. Now, something's funky here because I shouldn't have changes going that way. So it suggests that I didn't grab the right values, or I didn't calculate them the right way. So let's just go back here and look. So we've got everything reset to what it's supposed to be. I can do equals this amount minus this amount with the dollar signs. So somehow when I did my example, I didn't store these right, apparently. And we're going to do equals the cash down minus the min cash, again with the dollar signs to lock in the rows and the columns. Not sure what I did when I set that up, but clearly did it wrong. Okay, so we're going to take those values, easy fix, copy, paste value, so paste special values, just put them right back over there. All right. And before I forget, I'm going to do the same thing with the cash down up so that I don't forget. All right, so paste special values. There you go. So that's all fixed. Haven't done anything with that one yet, but that's okay. Now, a couple of things with the charts. Obviously, the first thing with this is, holy cow, I can't read what's going on there because of all of the location of the graph and so forth. Well, one of the things that you can do is go click on the axis where all the words are, right click on that and go Format Axis. Okay, now this looks a little bit different in Windows than it does in Mac, but basically what you're looking for is to go to the ticks. And what you want to do is, instead of having them show up next to the axis, we're going to have them set up so that they show to the lowest value that they're associated with. So that shifts them all over there. We could have put them to the right by hitting highest value. Okay, so that helps a little bit. We still have a little bit of problem at the bottom going on. So what I'm going to do is make this chart just a little bit longer. Okay, and now I'm going to take the inside of the chart and make it a little bit shorter. And that's going to help a little bit with this. Now, what we can do is we can tilt those numbers. So again, just click on that axis, hit Format Axis, okay, and we'll go to the numbers. I thought that's what it was, maybe not. There we go, we'll go to the text box here. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the text direction. I'll just rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, see how it changed it. So that helps, okay? Now, we're going to do one last thing here, and we're doing this because it makes this such a more useful chart, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to resort our values using absolute values so that we pick out the largest absolute value, let's just say change. So we'll go equals absolute value, ABS, of the PV down amount. Okay, so what it does is it makes everything positive. You should remember this from your algebra. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to resort all of this. So highlight it, go up here to data sort. Okay, and we're going to sort by column. What is it? Column D, which is the abs column. Smallest to largest. Okay, So now we've reordered it, and because we highlighted everything, we kept all the values lined up next to each other the way they're supposed to. The power of that, and this is why this is called a tornado diagram, is sorting that way sorts the order of the chart so that the things that have the biggest move are towards the top and the smallest towards the bottom. And from the standpoint of what we'll do next, we really only care about things that have a big impact. And so, for example, we see here that weighted average cost of capital has a big impact on present value, whereas down here, equipment repair and replacement doesn't hardly affect the present value of the project at all. And so, logically, we care more about and want to think more about the assumptions that we've made about things that cause big value changes as opposed to small value changes. Now, we can do the exact same thing in terms of the absolute value for the cash. Honestly, I will tell you, cash is not something that we normally do a tornado diagram on. Again, the whole purpose behind paying attention to the cash is to just make sure that we never ran out of cash. But you could certainly do that if you want. You could go through that process yourself. And if you did, what you would wind up with is something that looks like this. So you'd have two tornado diagrams. And notice that the things that impact your cash balances, right, that minimum cash balance, are different than the things that impact your cost of capital. Also notice that the size of the impacts are different. So this is called a sensitivity analysis, and the whole point of the analysis is basically to help you very quickly point out to people the assumptions that you made that really impact the value of your project versus the ones that don't affect it so much. Anyway, I know this is a little bit long video, but it is so much shorter than what it would have been if I'd taken through everything step by step. I apologize that, and thank you for your patience.